Yeah, so it's really interesting what's going on in agriculture now. There's a needed shift away from the chemicals. Some of conventional farmers that we're working with too, they're lessening their synthetic fertilizer usage by when they seed, they're seeding biologicals with their seed. Actually, it's really cool what they're doing, and they're finding that they can get the same fertility or yield, but with less synthetic fertilizer.
This is Evolve CPG, a community of purpose-driven brand leaders who not only believe in better, but actively pursue it. That's better products, better brands, and better leadership for a better world. Come join our online community at community.evolvecpg.com. I'm your host, Gage Mitchell, founder and creative director of Modern Species, a sustainable brand design agency helping better brands grow and scale their impact. On today's episode, we're speaking with Jason Freeman, CEO of Farmer Direct Organic, about organic family farms and the need for traceable supply chains you can trust.
Well, thank you for having me here today. My name is Jason Freeman. I'm the founder and CEO of Farmer Direct Organic Food. We are a certified organic supplier of beans, grains, legumes, and all sorts of healthy whole foods to grocery stores across the U.S. mostly, and a little bit in Canada.
Nice. I love how it's just a little bit in Canada, even though you're based in Canada, but it is such a big U.S. market down here. So, thanks for joining me, Jason, and sharing your story with this Evolve CPG community. Excited to have you on the show. And as somebody who's been kind of a pioneer in this natural products industry for a little while, I want to start with some of your kind of past before we dive into the present. And I know that from conversations I've seen you had on LinkedIn or just conversations we've had, that I know that you were involved in some of the early Canadian hemp legalization movement. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was really interesting. So it started way back for me in 1994. The origin story is I had a very good friend of mine who spent 6 weeks in jail for blockading a logging road up in the Ilaho Valley, about 3 hours north of Vancouver. Just absolutely beautiful old growth watershed. The good news about it was that they're actually successful. They stopped the logging, and the forestry company, government, and the First Nations there came up with a really awesome, and the environmentalists came up with a really awesome use plan for the watershed. And so, it's still remains standing today. So while this was all going on, a friend of mine said, you can make paper out of hemp. And so I was like, okay. So I went down that whole rabbit hole. I figured out that I didn't have the $150 million to build a hemp pulp and paper mill. And I knew basically nothing about the industry. So I decided to start by actually open up a hemp shop. So opened up a hemp shop in New Westminster with a few guys. And we had a lot of success actually building something called Vaportrons. So everyone knows vaporizers. So we were the second vaporizer that was produced. We called it the Vaportron. We were the first people to advertise vaporizer in High Times magazine. That was back in 1994. We were doing really well. We were basically selling these in our store, and then decided to export them to the U.S. We were doing really well until the U.S. Customs were like, "Hey, that's not tobacco paraphernalia.
Wait a minute,
that's cannabis paraphernalia." So they seized about 1,000 shipments at the border.
Oh my gosh!
And these were all direct to consumer, but that basically sunk our company. So, so I was like, "Well, what am I going to do next?" So a friend introduced me to this company called Wiseman Noble Sales and Marketing, and this was December of 1996 in Vancouver, Canada. And what Wiseman Noble Sales and Marketing was doing is a very small events and marketing company. There's 5 of us. They hired me on as their sales manager. We were lobbying the Canadian government to legalize industrial hemp. And that's a really interesting story because our strategy was that we're going to create a skeleton infrastructure for the industry, which would include national trade show and conference and a quarterly trade journal. So that was the Commercial and Industrial Hemp Symposiums and Commercial Hemp Magazine. And so every quarter we come up with a magazine, the government can provide their position, people would advertise farming equipment, planting seed, hemp clothing. But another thing that we did, which was really, really important, is we separated the issues. We separated the issue of cannabis, so smokable cannabis, medicine, and hemp. And we said, this is a hemp trade journal. This is a hemp conference and trade show. This is not about cannabis. So if you're doing cannabis, you can't. Like, we barred cannabis essentially. But the reason we did that is because we knew that the government was looking for a hemp industry, not a hemp cannabis industry, because they wanted to legalize cannabis, but they knew back in 1996 the U.S. government would put too much pressure on them to allow the Canadian government to legalize cannabis. So they looked to Europe that had already legalized industrial hemp and said, okay, first we do industrial hemp, then we do medical, and then we do recreational. And that's essentially what happened in Canada. So after 2 years of successful trade shows and trade journal, lobbying the federal government, we had about 400 people come to these trade shows every year. It's the same group. So it was really cool because the industry did form around the skeleton infrastructure that we created. Groups like Dr. Bronner's Magic Soap came and exhibited at the at the conference. Activists back then, of course, still activists now. Awesome company. Woody Harrelson was there. He
nice.
emceed or hosted the fashion show. It was a really awesome time. We had sponsored by Health Canada, which is like a U.S. Department of, what would you call that? It's like we have ministries of health, and federally you have your Department of Health, I think.
Yeah.
We had BC Ministry of Agriculture, I think, sponsor Bank of Montreal, which is one of our major banks, sponsor. So we really, created consensus so that in 1996, the federal government legalized industrial hemp. And then I think it was 2004, the federal government legalized medicinal cannabis. And then it was 2018, I think it was 2019 when we legalized recreational cannabis in Canada, which is still very contentious because, did they legalize it or they just like recriminalize it, right? They corporatize it, recriminalize it. And just like in the States, the legal market is bleeding red ink. It's a complete mess. There's better ways to legalize our bad legislation than what they did. But anyways, the situation will improve over time, of course, as it usually does in these cases, when the government finally makes somewhat of the right move to, legalize cannabis. Anyways, so that was
nice.
So 1998, federal government legalized industrial hemp in Canada. And so at that time, I was like, well, okay. So I still wanted to kind of try to see how far along I could get to that pulp paper mill, that hemp pulp and paper mill, and realize that, if I want to get there, I have to start really, I felt, at the farm gate. I have to build a relationship with the farmers who are going to grow the fiber that eventually going to go into the pulp paper mill. So there was this company called GenX, which was a collection of organic farmers out of Saskatchewan who had planting seed and could put in a few acres of organic hemp for me. So I approached them. They said, sure, if you can come up with 40 grand deposit, we'll do it. So crazy events. I got some stockbroker from Vancouver to invest 40 grand. So that was great. Farmers put in a crop. And so this was spring of 1999, came up with the money. So the fall of 1999, we had a crop. So I formed a company called BioHemp and came out with the first line of certified organic hemp seed foods in Canada. I think in North America, but definitely in Canada. There was, I think Omega Nutrition had oil, hemp seed oil at that time. We had oil, flour, and what did we, oil, flour. I think that was about it. It wasn't much of a product line. That was in the early days before there was hulled hemp seed or hemp hearts, which is really like, at least for me personally, that's the go-to hemp food.
Yeah, for sure.
It's amazing for you. It has omega-3s, omega-6s, GLA, SDA. It has excellent amino acid profile. So healthy for you. You know, getting some hemp in tea every day is my recommendation.
Yeah.
That will keep the doctor away. So so that was so where are we? Biohemp was formed. We got the farmers to grow the hemp. So the harvest came and we had all this beautiful organic hemp seed, and so we got it crushed in the oil and milled into flour and started selling it. To anyone, like health food stores. We even went around to like massage therapists to see if they buy the hemp oil.
Nice.
So it was excellent oil for your skin, but it doesn't work because it stains everything. Right?
Yeah.
So just
the laundry
real,
bills went through the roof.
Yeah. So, started to develop a little bit of following, and around 2000, so May of 2000, I decided to move out to Saskatchewan because that's where our farmers were, and that's where all the processors were. And so that's the hemp part. So
nice. So that's the background of biohemp. That's helpful. I was curious about that because we hadn't talked too much about that company. But out of curiosity, were you heavily involved all the way through kind of the 3 stages you talked about, industrial hemp to medical and then to recreational, or were you mostly involved in the industrial stage and then, biohemp and so on and so forth, and then you kind of moved on?
Yeah, I went from, I guess hemp lobbying into organic agriculture.
Yeah. Okay.
And so all the medical stuff wasn't involved in that industry. Super supportive, really some amazing, courageous people, especially from the patient advocacy and some of the patients themselves. Just ridiculous that a medicine used over thousands of years was criminalized.
Yeah.
Which, we should all kind of take a look at that and go like, okay, so we apparently live in democracy, yet the government can pass laws which are completely unscientific. It's democracy is a loaded word, right? If corporations control legislation, do we really have democracy? Because we can vote every 4 years. If corporations essentially control who gets to be the nominees for, the American system, a 2-party system, which is, just ridiculous. It's interesting that people are still so partisan today, when they can't really see their choices perhaps between Coke and Pepsi, but it's perpetual war regardless.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think we're like democratic by name, but not necessarily by practice. It's more of like a republic or something like that is how the U.S. operates, right? So
yeah, it's an empire, and Canada's part of that, right? We're an ally to the empire, and this is not a condemnation of Americans or Canadians, individual citizens. It's really, a system we inherited from the British, which was probably inherited from the Romans, and how we've decided to politically and socially organize ourselves for some reason. And a big part of it, unfortunately, is that we're not teaching children critical thinking skills in school. We're not even teaching in university. If my undergrad experience was anything, it was 20, 30 years ago, I think.
So they probably progressed a tiny bit since then, but not much. I think they always say academia is at least like 10 years behind industry, if not 20 years. So they're probably still not much further than from when you were in school.
Yeah. And if we don't learn to critically think, like on whole as a society, the average citizen is a critical thinker, we're going to destroy ourselves, and we are. We're on one of these rabbit holes. This is a stat like I like to quote, and it's one of the reasons I'm in what, let's call it the good food movement. 34 million Americans have diabetes. Man. 95% of that is type 2 diabetes, which is diet related or diet caused diabetes, and it can be cured through diet. A further 88 million are pre-diabetic, and 95% of that is type 2. Again, it can be treated through diet. We have a system where we literally, and it's transparent. This has been written in the New York Times by the industry itself, for former food scientists who are executives, for example. We literally have a situation where corporations are preying on, I guess, the ignorance of the public, and using food as addiction to make profits. And so just to, really put it in a nutshell. So the strategy is, if you're a mainstream CPG company, it's to, get the cheapest refined processed products as possible. So you can put it into a standardized addictive format, which will be consumed and literally provide like stimulation to people's pleasure centers in the brain, right? Like straight up addiction.
Yeah.
Whether that's combinations of salt, fat, sugar, or, just each of those individually. This is what's going on. It's been admitted to.
Yeah.
So, it's out there.
Yeah. And it sounds almost like conspiracy level, like villain when you describe it in that short little summary there. But when you think about the timeline, like they probably started making real food at one point 100 years ago or something. But then over time, all the pressure to constantly increase profit and scale and scale and scale, they had to slowly but surely compromise in every possible way with nutrition quality, with quality of agriculture, with the ingredients they're putting in there to make things cheaper and so on and so forth, and more addictive because they needed to sell you not just one pack a day, but or a month, but like one pack a week and then one pack a day of whatever it is that they're selling. So like when you think about it in the timeline, it's makes it seem less conspiracy theory and more, oh, well, of course, that's exactly how it worked. And that's how capitalism drives companies to act, right?
It's a brilliant business model. It really is, right? And I like to take the sinister out of it and just go to like it's culturally acceptable. So even the people that are doing this are eating these products, and like, oh, it's just a little bit of sugar. Any of you heard that? Oh, it's just a little bit of sugar, and it's okay because you can go to your doctor, and the doctor will manage your disease through medication, yep. And this is absolutely accepted by at least half the population, maybe more.
They're just on autopilot.
No one has been taught. No one has been taught anything differently. When you're at school and you're a child, you're not taught about nutrition. You're not taught about amino acids and the building blocks, of life and sound health. We are not even taught about, the true nature of disease, for example. So disease has a lot more to do with vitamin and mineral deficiency, so that your body is no longer able to carry out basic functions such as immune system functioning, and then an opportunistic pathogen will come along and attack a weak organism, which is you, right? And through industrial agriculture since the 1950s, so even if you try to eat well and say like I'm just going to eat all just whole foods, lots of fruits and vegetables, those fruits and vegetables that you are eating are significantly nutrient depleted than they were in the 1950s.
Plus, they've got a bunch of added goodies you didn't want in there, like hormones and pesticides and other things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have the double whammy of, there's residues of, chemical residues, synthetic chemical residues that have been shown to be toxic. I think it was yesterday, a colleague of mine, we're discussing paraquat, which is still used today, and it's directly linked to Parkinson's disease. So they've directly linked the paraquat to Parkinson's disease. But of course, right, to live under the fantastic notion that we are producing chemicals to kill pests that attack our food,
but it's not going to harm us. Yeah. That just blows my mind.
That's just fact.
Like you said, we're not teaching critical thinking, but like anyone who's gone through a logic course would be able to see that as just a silly premise that we can put all these toxins in our food, but we're somehow magically immune to the effects of them. Just crazy.
Yeah, it's a fantasy. It's a corporate fantasy world, and or corporate and governmental legislative fantasy world. And this is the situation that we're at. Yeah. So how, and so what's happening is that millions of people, consumers, farmers, people that work in corporations, small businesses, they're starting to make a change. They're starting to address these issues. There's a lot of forces that are pushing against that, of course, but it's just really, really interesting what's going on right now. I don't know if you had a chance to read that article in the New York Times about superweeds and metabolic resistance to herbicides. So,
no, but I know about it in general. Yeah.
Yeah. So even the farmers are saying that the GMO technology, Roundup Ready, isn't working. The weeds are becoming resistant. Just in my small world, one of our organic farmers was talking to his neighbor who lost 3/4 of land to pigweed, Palmer amaranth. Just whatever he sprayed didn't work, so he had no idea how to manage it now. So
yet again, another thing that logic would help you understand. Of course, like evolution happens. Like of course those plants are going to evolve to resist whatever you keep spraying on them because they're trying to survive too.
And this is the wild part about it, though. And this is from the soil. I'm sorry, the weed scientists in the New York Times. The wild part about it was that they had their test plots, and they had some weeds that their ancestors weren't exposed to glyphosate Roundup, but they still had resistance to the Roundup when they were sprayed. So the scientists are going like, "What the hell's going on?"
Yeah, that's creepy.
And what they concluded was that because the plants have been sprayed with so many other herbicides previously, they started to build up something called metabolic resistance. And what metabolic resistance is when the plant just kills anything foreign that comes into its system before it reaches the targeted cell.
Wow. Okay.
So it's literally killing or dealing with the herbicide before it can hit the targeted cell. So it doesn't matter what herbicide you come up with or throw at it. It's just dealing with it before it hits the targeted cell. So the herbicide isn't working.
But I'm sure corporations will find a way to take that evolution and put that into corn and whatever else, so the corn resists everything, so you can dump more chemicals. It's just kind of like a cycle. Like you try to make because I think that's where a lot of this came from, right? It's the GMO products. They designed them so that they could withstand the chemicals, so you could dump a bunch of chemicals. But now all those chemicals are all the weeds are resistant to those chemicals, and it's just this self-fulfilling cycle that keeps spinning.
Yeah, what the scientists are saying is though that the nature's caught up with like this type of technology, and that no matter what they throw at, the weeds are just going to be there with the corn going, okay, we're still taking over because we're like badass.
Totally. Well, I guess we need to figure out a way to make paper out of those weeds.
Yeah, yeah. What some of our farmers and the conventional farmers are doing now, though, is there's electric weed zappers. So they're literally able to do that instead of spray, and it's significantly cheaper.
Interesting.
So, so it's really interesting what's going on in agriculture now. There's a needed shift away from the chemicals. Some of conventional farmers that we're working with too, they're lessening their synthetic fertilizer usage by when they seed, they're seeding biologicals with their seed. It's really cool what they're doing, and they're finding that they can get the same fertility or yield, but with less synthetic fertilizer. Less synthetic fertilizer you have, the better it is for the microbiological life in the soil, because a lot of what that life does is it makes minerals and vitamins in the soil bioavailable to the plants. When you use synthetic fertilizers, it just bypasses them, so they die off. There's no use for them. That synergistic relationship between the plant roots and the biology is interrupted. And the whole key to building soil and therefore sequestering greenhouse gases. There's one benefit of that is all about the soil microorganisms, the biology in the soil. So you really want to feed that. You want to encourage that. It's essentially the whole theory and management practices behind organics.
Yeah, organic and regenerative. I think the Kiss the Ground movie, which I still need to jump in and watch that, but I feel like I've already watched it because I saw so many clips at Expo West. But yeah, I think that movie kind of breaks down a lot of that as well, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. It's like I haven't watched it either. I'm sure it's an awesome movie. Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's weird, man. I can't bring myself to watch those type of shows anymore. I used to be super into them, but after 25 years, it's like, well, it's what we do every day.
I know. It starts to feel like you're just on repeat. Like after so many books and movies or whatever on a subject, you're like, okay, I'm not reading anything new anymore. So it gets a little hard to make yourself watch it. But all that's, I think, a good segue because we're geeking out on your how you got into agriculture, and then all this interest in things like organic agriculture, nutrient density, and so on and so forth, which I think are somewhat hallmarks of the Farmer Direct brand. So after you sold BioHemp, tell me what that kind of journey or transition was like into founding Farmer Direct.
Okay, first, I think it's a good point in time to introduce my t-shirt.
Yeah, do it.
Just so people
So for those, describe it for those who are just listening to audio only as well.
So yeah, I was on LinkedIn. It's my only social media platform that I'm on. Yeah, I'm just saying that without any prejudice or anything, just in case people want to know what my social media literacy level is. It's pretty low. But I did find this awesome regenerative organic farmer on LinkedIn, and he was selling these t-shirts. So Graze Against the Machine is basically like, his motif. And I think, it's a great t-shirt because one of the big issues with agriculture is that governments and corporations are telling farmers how to farm. And instead of investing into the farms and allowing the farmers to do what they intuitively know how to do, and that's build soil. So I was in Saskatchewan, had BioHemp. We're doing pretty good. We started developing clientele and health food stores across Canada and a few in the US, and a few really decent wholesale customers. So it was going well. At that point in time, my marketing manager made an offer to purchase the company from me. And I was like, okay. It was a pretty good offer. And we weren't really getting along. So,
nice.
It was basically just the two of us. And so I was like, great. And so that happened. And after that happened, 3 farmers that we had purchased hemp seed from BioHemp said, hey, we have other crops that we'd like you to buy. And so I said to them, if they form a cooperative, I'll manage the sales, marketing, and logistics for them. And so in summer of 2002, Farmer Direct Co-op was formed. And so that was a super interesting ride. It still is today. The complexities of primary agriculture all the way up to the retail shelf is mind-boggling. Like just cleaning grain, just that one piece to clean grain. There's just so much that can go wrong. But anyways, at the end of the day, we got really successful of, taking the grain from the farm and transforming it into, awesome, delicious organic whole grains from organic family farms. The company was doing decent enough, but then the 2009 financial crash hit. And at that point in time, Farmer Direct Co-op, all we did was commodity sales to organic food manufacturers. So we were 100% organic, but it was like truckloads of lentils to Amy's Kitchen, for example. We ship flax to Europe. But when when that hit, and I should say that Amy's Kitchen is an awesome buyer. So if there's any Amy's Kitchen fans out there, and you ever, are just organic food fans, and you wonder, well, what's the relationship between like these brands and the actual farmers? Amy's Kitchen is an awesome example of, an ethical buyer. So,
Nice.
thumbs up to Amy's.
We'll have to get them on the show.
Yeah, they actually care. They care more about quality and relationship than price necessarily. So they always do offer fair prices.
Nice.
I always like to, even though it's organic, doesn't mean everybody in the industry is being fair to the farmers. And in fact, there's lots of issues with fraud and offshoring and stuff like that. So I like to, give kudos or shouts out to brands that do care about domestic acres and expanding those, and treating the farmers fairly. So in the financial, crisis, what do we call it now?
Recession, maybe?
Man, that was like 12 years ago almost.
Yeah.
The commodity markets just went like flipped like crazy. Prices crashed. The markets completely dried up. And, just tremendous volatility. And so, we met the farmers, talked to the board and said, what I think we should do is we need to take Farmer Direct Co-op and brand it. We need to, we need stabler, better paying markets. And so that's, getting up to the retail, right? Instead of just trying to sell to food manufacturers and commodity sales. And so that was about 2010. We started to develop the Farmer Direct Co-op brand. We figured that, we really want to push the envelope and have a differentiated product. So we decided to become the first organization, the first national brand to be certified to domestic fair trade standards through the Agricultural Justice Project. So very similar to, fair trade from the Global South. We're doing this domestically. We called it the Fair Deal. So, it was going okay. We're selling, a few pallets here and there. And then the Whole Foods Market called. And they're like, we love what you guys are doing. We want to launch you nationally through Central instead of regionally.
Nice.
Now, to all the CPG people out there, how it traditionally used to work at Whole Foods Market is like you have a brand or an offering, you get into one region. If it sells well, maybe the other regions will pick it up. But the central office, national, never, didn't. It was rare that they would take a brand and just launch it in all the regions. The reason they did, though, is because the buyers really understood that what we were doing would resonate with consumers. So what we were doing is our attributes were it was 100% farmer owned, 100% organic, and 100% fair deal or domestic fair trade. And our product lines, because we didn't have any money to develop anything or fancy packaging or whatever. Fancy packaging came later, and that's a whole issue too, which we'll talk about, with packaging, plastic packaging, all of that. But it was a line of 25-pound bags of flax, lentils, certified organic, of course, like I said, beans, split peas, split red lentils, and a few other items. I think oats were in there for retailer bulk bins. I had no idea. I'm up in Regina, Saskatchewan. The furthest or the closest Whole Foods Market is like 2,000 kilometers away or something like that.
Yeah.
So, I had no idea what that really meant. We thought we'd sell them maybe, a few pallets a month. So it ended up being 5 to 7 truckloads of business a month. And it was awesome. And so it took us from, basically insolvent, we're about to go bankrupt, to, having money in the bank, retained earnings. And
it's also amazing that you were able to make that scale leap. So that will crush a lot of companies not being prepared to scale that quickly.
Oh yeah, sometimes I think there's divine intervention. I have no idea how we actually made it through with the cash that we actually had to work with. But the answer to that, of course, is yes, how you made it through, and it's all down to relationships. And we had just really great relationships with our farmers. We had one farmer I shouted his name, but some of them are uncomfortable about that, so we'll just call him Mr. B. And
Nice.
he we took grain, we sold that grain of his. We didn't pay him for God, I think all of it for about 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
So he was like, cool. He kept saying we gave him a little bit, right? And he was just like, we believe in what you guys are doing. It's important. So, keep going. And this is a farmer that had a lot of success with organics. Actually, interesting story. He was a conventional farmer. He went bankrupt. Had to, or almost, no, I think he did go bankrupt. And so he had to make the change to organics. And he turned that into, organic rotations done properly are an economically viable option for family-sized farms. And if that organic farmer can build relationships with a buyer that's going to treat them fairly and pay them good prices, not just like, well, I can get it cheaper from Joe down the road for, it's a relationship, right? You know how much it costs the farmer to grow the crop. So, there has to be an expectation all the way up the supply chain of a certain price. If you can do that, then, it's a winning formula. So, okay. So where were we? We're with, getting
National
the
Whole Foods. Yeah.
Everything's going great. So from 2013 to 2016, we sold in the Whole Foods market. So I formed the co-op in 2002. It had been 14 years. I really wanted to push the retail hard, of course, because that was where our margin was. Some of the board wanted us to focus on commodity sales instead. And so I said to them, look, okay, we have a difference of opinion here. So, I'm going to go my own way. You guys, I got a good severance package, all of that. And so unfortunately in 2018, the farmers came back to me and said, hey, essentially we're farmers, managing a CPG brand is it's a long way from the farm gate.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
And it is a long way from the farm gate. It's a brutally long way from the farm gate. So, so they basically asked me if I'd purchase the brand, take the brand over, and but still have the relationship with them where we purchase their grain and we develop our vision of organics, which is a farmer and worker centered vision of organics, soil centered vision of organics. So in 2018, me and my business partner Luke Zigovitz, and Luke Zigovitz is an organic family farmer out of Wisconsin. We have another small company called Organic Hemp Science. So you can check out Organic Hemp Science on the website. What Luke is doing, he's like, if you want to talk about regenerative organic farming, oh my God. He has about 20 plus acres of land on a ridgetop in Wisconsin. So it was heavily eroded when he bought the farm. In less than 5 years, he's brought it back. The fertility is amazing. And so he's growing absolutely beautiful certified organic hemp flowers, and we're extracting it, making certified organic distillates and extract CBD. So
nice.
If anybody's looking for, am I allowed to plug on this show, or is that
for sure? That's part of the point. Yeah, let people know. Right, it's great.
So if you're looking for a really high quality certified organic family farm made and processed in the USA, and we use critical CO2 extraction, so there's no solvents in it at all other than CO2. So it's a super clean product. OrganicHempScience.com, and you can buy some, and Luke will mail them to you.
Nice. He'll personally mail it. Yeah, farmer and fulfillment shop. Yeah.
yeah. And he's got a beautiful family, living on his farm, his wife and 3 kids. So it's like, what I hopefully what organics is able to do. And I think there will be a mass transition to organics or sustainable agriculture, right? Like, so I don't know if these large conventional farms are necessarily going to be organic, but they're going to, significantly reduce the herbicide and the synthetic fertilizers to a point where they are building soil, and it's demonstrative. It can be demonstrated, but there's going to be a lot of that mid-sized farm that is going to be able to thrive under organics, and so hopefully, we see revitalization of rural America, based on people that are, living and working in the rural areas, stewarding the soil. Right, like it's really for us to get back to some sort of, I guess, environmental consistency. We really need to take care of the soil and grow it. So, again, organic agriculture way of doing that, but it's not just the soil, of course, it's the culture, it's the community, going and really seeing that thrive and grow. As the soil grows, so will the communities, like really in a profound way. And we can see that in places like Africa. People are trying to push a North American or Western style of industrialized agriculture. So there's significant pushback because it doesn't work. It doesn't feed your rural communities. Monoculturing corn is just good for the government because they can control the food supply. There's a whole, we can go down rabbit holes, like 1970.
There's like 15 episodes worth of rabbit holes in this, yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, so, okay, so 2018, we relaunched the brand as Farmer Direct Organic, and the attributes were a bit different. So with Farmer Direct Co-op, it's 100% farmer-owned, 100% organic, and 100% domestic fair trade. Under Farmer Direct Organic Foods, it's 100% organic. It's 100% traceable back to the family farm, which grew your grain, and it's tested for pesticides and herbicides. So 100% tested. And I think I'm missing, it's kosher, but I don't think people really care about that.
I think you kind of merged two of them in one. It's family farmed, right? But so you said traceable and back to the family farm, but those are to some degree two different things, right? As well. So traceable and family farmed.
So, and what it says on our actual packaging is, so organic, traceable, and family farmed. So, so it's working out really well. People are resonating with that a lot. And I think, again, the biggest thing with Farmer Direct Co-op that people resonated with is that we're a 100% organic company, and that it was like, real organic from farmers here. And so we're able to bring that over to Farmer Direct Organic Foods, that, we're staying true to the organic mission. So as a consumer, if you support the brand, that 100% of that dollars goes back into organic, as opposed to, almost all our competitors, or most of our competitors, which do organic and conventional SKUs. So that's important to a lot of consumers. It's important to me as a consumer. I should say too that Farmer Direct was founded by a consumer, me, right? From that perspective. And so everything that we do is really based on that consumer perspective. There's so much wrong with the food industry that, that has to change, and the marketplace will respond positively to that. But it doesn't really seem like corporate executives or, leaders of food companies think that way. They're not trying to, I guess, be, in time with the paradigm shift. They
like to play catch up after they see the wave. They're like, oh, look at all those brands riding that amazing wave. We should get on that. And they come a little late to the game, or find ways to cut corners. I think some of the criticisms of like the non-GMO verified movement is that it just gave corporations like a cheaper way to like give consumers what they want without having to go the extra mile and be organic, right? So like anytime there's a way to cut corners, that's often what they do, unfortunately. Not all of them, but many of them.
Yeah, but a lot of them, right? And my opinion of someone in the food industry of the non-GMO project, I think it was a brilliant strategy to prevent the proliferation of GMOs in conventional food. But what it also did was it gave conventional food some lipstick to paint on to look better than it was before. But it's still conventional food that's sprayed with herbicides and pesticides that's, produced in an industrial way. It's just that they didn't adopt the GMO, which is good, right? So it's still conventional foods. The reason why people are eating organic because of pesticide residue and it's still there in the non-GMO products, unless they're specifically certified organic. And so that was the danger of the non-GMO product, just like natural, right? Consumers started equating natural with organic, even though there's no legal definition of natural, and it was essentially just conventional food that was still sprayed and grown with synthetic fertilizers and put into a bag, but now it's just natural. So I give a really good example of that. There's a company, it's a legacy brand, they've been around 30 or 40 years. And they used to be 100% organic. And they have a mascot. It's this older guy with a beard. He wears a hat, and the hat's red. And they used to be 100% organic. Now I think about maybe 50% of their product offerings are organic. And what they did was they switched out their, say, organic flax SKU for a premium or a natural flax SKU. So they basically dumped their organic farmer suppliers that have been supplying them for years, allowed them to grow their brand up to a point where they were now mainstream, and they literally dumped those farmers and just replaced it with conventionally grown flax and put a natural or premium word on the label.
Yeah.
And charge consumers considerably more than conventional flax, but a little less than organic flax. So from a business point of view, it's brilliant because you immediately increase your margin significantly overnight. But of course, the problem is a lot of consumers, they still thought they were eating organic flax.
Yeah.
So you just, as a consumer, you gotta be really careful, and you still, if you're buying things in packages, you have to read the labels and just make sure that it's still what you thought it was.
Yeah, that's happened to me multiple times where I have a product that I'm reliant on, and then you go to grab it one day and you're like, wait a minute, where'd the USDA certified organic logo go? And then you have to go investigate online and you find out that they're not anymore or something. It's confusing. That's why I appreciate brands like Farmer Direct Organic, where you don't have to think. Everything is organic, and they're not going to change that, right? So that's great.
That will never change. If that changes, I'm not here anymore.
Yeah, if that changes, don't blame Jason. It's someone else.
Yeah.
Well, literally,
I'll just form another food company or do something else, because that's the whole point, right? It's like when I say that Farmer Direct Organic Foods Farmer Direct Co-op was created by a consumer. At least the driving market force behind it was me. Of course, the driving, like what makes it all possible, are the farmers. But, from that perspective, consumers started Farmer Direct Co-op and then Farmer Direct Organic Foods. And, to water that down, it's just, for me, insanity.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I also think from a business point of view, it's insanity too, because there's millions, literally now in the States, there's millions of hardcore organic consumers. And they want something to trust. A lot of them are really educated now. It's like, why would you break that? I just feel you break that trust by doing something like taking an organic SKU and making it natural for short-term gain. I think the marketplace is a lot more sophisticated. But one thing it does need, though, it needs brand champions like Farmer Direct as alternative when other CPG companies do stuff like that. So along those lines, too, what we're finding out is that retailers, especially independent retailers, saying to us, hey, great, you actually have like a bean set. Well, we'll kick those other guys out because they're not 100% organic.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, and we were for the last 52 weeks running, according to Spins, Farmers Direct brand was the #1 national brand in shelf-stable beans.
Nice. That's awesome.
In the natural foods channel. So that was just right below private label organic, and then private label natural, and then Farmer Direct. So we were pumped about that, and feel that it's a validation that our attributes are spot on for what the market wants to see.
Yeah, that's great. And we were about to start talking about like change of what will and won't change. But speaking of change, let's talk about the current chapter too. So Farmer Direct is now in yet another sort of phase of its life cycle with the becoming part of the Above Food family. So could you talk a little bit about how that came to be and what you're hoping that will bring for the brand?
Yeah, so along the road, along this path, this consumer realized that, man, to really set up supply chains properly, it's costs so much money. You're talking about millions of dollars, literally millions of dollars to reform supply chains. And so, I'm thinking, how much effect can our company really have? How long is it going to take us to develop that type of financing, that type of retained earnings, that we could even get to the point where, we can build something and affect change, even that's like a, real loading site where we can like blend wheat, for example. Like that's, okay. So one commodity, right? One issue. You got wheat, you got organic wheat on the farm. Well, to sell that organic wheat to a mill, you need somewhere to blend that wheat, because the mill doesn't want to buy, this protein, that protein. They want it to be blended and delivered to them at like, a price. Okay, so you have to build infrastructure to do that. You have to build a blending facility. Step one. Now, that doesn't really help you out because you're still involved in the commodity market. So, you're still a price taker, and you got to go back to your farmers and say, well, we just got a crappy price on the wheat. So, once it goes to the mill, it's like you need to build a flour mill. If you really want to control the margins and have the quality of product you want, and especially if you want something like a mill that only does organics, so you don't have cross-contamination with conventional grain, which, you have pesticide residue contamination. And another issue that I don't like about split mills is fraud's way too easy. It's just way too easy to throw in a load of conventional wheat. And you do that and you make so much money. So that's another issue with the industry, right? It's great when you're dealing with honest players and honest farmers, but there is a lot of temptation for fraud. So, you want to really be in control of your supply chains and know what you're getting into. And plus, then you can control your margins. So then you got to build a flour mill. Okay, that's great. But no one buys 50-pound bags of flour. So now you have to buy the packaging line, right? And that probably has to be in a separate facility because the flour mill is too dusty. And then there's all sorts of regulations with like fire and safety. And you have to build explosion control rooms and explosive proof rooms and explosive proof engines and, all of this. And then so the capital expense to build the infrastructure, I'm getting around to answer your questions. The capital expense to build that infrastructure, do it properly, is just out of this world. So went looking for a partner with deeper pockets, and came across Above Food, which is Group L Saskatchewan. And this is really interesting because for 18 months, I was, trying to find, essentially organic money. There's all these ethical investors out there. And the one thing that the ethical investors all have in common is they're absolutely spineless when it comes to CPG startups. And even worse, they won't tell you that they're spineless. So they'll string you along. And this is just really good advice for CPG startups, if you're looking for money, try to find business people to invest in your company, not investors. Investors, excuse my language, are a fucking joke. You go to the investors once you're 5, 10 years down the road, you have positive retained earnings, and then you go to those investors and you fleece them. Okay.
Nice.
You get like these idiotic valuations, like companies are getting like, $250 million for a company that's doing $20 million in sales. Right. But initially, hey, and if you find an investor that's not spineless and will actually tell you the truth, more power to you. But you, from my experience, 18 months, they don't invest in CPG startup. And like when I say CPG startup, from January 2022 to January 2020, July through July 2020, we had $500,000 of net profit. Okay. The previous, I think it was 18 months, we had about $1.5 million of debt. So we got into $1.5 million of debt. We had able to pay $500,000 off. And, so we're trending in the right direction. We were distributed nationally by Unify. We just got KE on board. Chain-wide Whole Foods market still. We had the Fresh Market on board. Like, it was popping.
Yeah.
Couldn't get them to invest. That could have been me too, right? So you never know, right? But like, just, on the face of it, the brand was popping. The net profit was positive. Great attributes. First best in category attributes, but no, still too early, right?
Yeah.
So that's just a little advice for people looking for money. Try to find businessmen.
Banks do the same thing, right? It's like they're looking for the sure bet where they can guarantee they're going to make their money and then use that money to make more money. Same thing with investors, where it's business people. They get it. They get the long-term vision. They understand what it means to take a risk, and they can read your reports and see that uptick trend and know what it means to get nationally distributed, whatever. And they're more informed to take bigger risks, I think.
Yeah. So, so try to find a business people in your particular, like, if you're in beverage, try to find some beverage business people. But you may find business people in like industries that are not connected to food, but for whatever reason they're making a move into food, diversification, lots of reasons. But so we found a group called Above Food, actually approached us, we put our flag out there looking for money. And they're really interesting because they came to us, said, look, we know farming has to change. What their main business is they're exporting like lentils and peas and chickpeas and wheat to conventional to 300 customers in 35 countries around the world. So they have like significant infrastructure, but they wanted to get into the CPG space in North America, but they didn't just want to get into it. They understood that their conventional farmers have to get more sustainable. They have to scale sustainability, and they need that thought leadership. So, and they want to bring us on board for that organic thought leadership. It's a really interesting situation. So I pressed them. Right? I was like, okay, well, we can do this, but like in the contract, I want you to sign that, you're going to keep farmer direct organic. We're never going to do conventional or natural. It's always going to stay. So we got that in there. They're like, no problem. We don't want you to not be organic. Organics is the future, and we need to learn from you and your farmers about what you're doing and see how much of that is applicable to conventional farming.
Nice.
Now, they already were doing a bunch of really cool things. They were using biologicals to increase fertility and reducing synthetic fertilizer use. They were reducing their desiccation of certain crops and trying to get away from that. That's something we should talk about too, desiccation, because it never comes up, and it's super important. So they're already doing some better practice with their conventional farmers, and so they came to us, and it was really good. they are committed to organic vision, and since the sale in May, they've invested heavily into organic vision, which is allowing us now to create programs. For example, we're doing, I'm really excited about that. We're doing a Zoom with 200 retailers, and we're going to, it's about educating them about soil and whatnot, and also our bulk bin programs.
Nice. That's cool.
And I think we're even going to be providing them with the bins, some kind of arrangement there. And so excited about that too, because one of the things that we had to do during the pandemic is we had to shift from 25-pound bags for bulk bins to 1-pound shelf packs. And so now we went from not really creating any plastic waste, now creating all this plastic waste. And, just so people know the situation about what is, what's going on with packaging, and especially the pouches, ubiquitous in the grocery store shelves, and that there are compostable options out there. The problem is that compostable options are 2 to 3 times more expensive. So what we're kind of trying to figure out is how do we introduce those? And we're thinking of maybe 1 or 2 SKUs, advertising them, and basically saying to the consumer, this is why it's more expensive. But ultimately, again, our thing is COVID hit, bulk bins shut down. Everyone got rid of their scoop bulk bins, and now have gone back to gravity feed. This is for, sanitation issues. So, there is now if COVID happens again, I know it's continuous, ongoing thing, right? But, now these retailers and consumers feel comfortable with the gravity bins. So these are kind of COVID approved bins, if I could, for lack of a better term. So that is the solution to plastic waste, straight up. Right. And one really cool thing too, we got in contact with a company that is producing compostable pouches for the bulk bins. So affordable, compostable, so you don't have to use plastic at all for the bulk bins.
Nice. That's awesome.
And one more initiative that we're doing, because our company, CEO is a consumer. So he's going to do consumer things, not necessarily business things, right? And so one of the consumer things we're doing, which of course there has to be a business justification for it. I'm not an idiot, right? It has to be business, not all the time. There has to be a business justification for it. So the business justification is that, consumers want companies, corporations to show some responsibility for their waste, right? And we feel we'll be rewarded. So we joined something called Repurpose Global. We found this awesome group, mostly out of Asia. And what they're literally doing is for every pound of plastic we produce, we're paying them to go into the ocean and extract a pound of plastic. Nice. And then they take that plastic and they put it through their system. They actually have real recycling systems. So for us, it's okay, the plastic waste in North America goes into landfills. It typically doesn't end up in the ocean. So it doesn't necessarily deal with the waste that we're producing here, but still we feel that we're taking, the waste we're producing out of the environment. And, that's the best that we can come up with right now, until either compostable bags come down in price or consumers accept the price of the compostable bags, or the consumers we're just going to shop at your bulk bins because hey man, that's you get it.
That's the way to go. Yeah.
Yeah. And the future of Farmer Direct, we will have multi-ingredient consumer packaged goods. And again, our brand promise will always be the same, as long as I'm with the company. And, and I say that in jest. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah,
no one's saying anything. It's, I have 25 years of building organic supply chains under my belt. So it's there's just a tremendous amount to consider. But, our brand promise will always be organic, always be traceable. It doesn't matter how many ingredients are in that consumer packaged good. It's always going to have the same brand promise: traceable, pesticide tested, family farm, organic. And then also, we're figuring this out, but I want everything that we produce to be, approved for a diabetic diet.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what that means is that, essentially in a nutshell, that we're going to have a really really low total carbohydrate to total dietary fiber ratio. So if we can hit a 5-to-1, essentially what that means, that's another way of saying, basically virtually no added sugar and no refined flour products in it. So, but a good but it doesn't have to taste bad, right? So a good example of this would be a cookie.
Okay.
So you have a usual cookie, refined white flour, refined sugar, chocolate from supply chains, which involve slavery. It just blows my fucking mind. Excuse my language, but still in this 2021, we have people that are making 7 figures, that are heads of corporations, that are literally living off the avails of slavery. That's illegal.
Yeah, quick plug for another podcast, For a Better World. Check that out. They kind of break down some of the supply chains and the kind of around the fair trade or not so fair trade movements.
Yeah, Dana Geffner, she knows her supply chains very well from that ethical perspective. And full transparency, she's on our Farmer Direct Organics board. So, we're big fans of For a Better World. And so, as a solution to this chronic disease crisis we have in America, food corporations have to prepare even snack foods, prepared meals. It doesn't matter, that are diabetic friendly and that people can trust, and so they don't have to think about it.
Is there a certification or something for that? I don't know if I've seen one.
No, the only thing I've heard is like Whole Foods Market has told me about their NSA, which is no sugar added, and they also have like NSA's no salt added. I told them they should come out with like Snowden NSA sauces. They
Nice.
thought that was funny. We should do that, right? Yeah. And then like profits can go to press freedom organizations, stuff like that.
That's cool.
Right? Like, tell me that wouldn't take off.
Totally.
You know awesome. What I mean? Yeah. Like the marketplace is craving, it's starved for companies that are doing innovative things, that socially innovative things.
That seems like something Ben & Jerry's would probably do for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I just kind of another rabbit hole down there. Where were we?
Yeah. So we were talking about the future and what, all the new infrastructure that Above Food can bring in, and the future of Farmer Direct, kind of not just keeping up with its family farmed, organic, and traceable, but maybe diving deeper into kind of nutrient density or the right nutrient balance for diabetics or other kind of health concerns.
Yeah, I'll give you an awesome example of what Above is allowing us to do. So one of the issues right now is that protein. Everyone's into protein. So like we're taking soy protein, we're taking pea protein, we're fractionating it. And, people are eating these things, but it's not necessarily good for you. It lacks the dietary fiber, and you're transforming the product. And it's usually like a single, ingredient, like for the proteins, like a soy isolate or something from pea. Now, if you take other grains, like you mix a oat flour with fava bean flour, you have an excellent protein profile. Super healthy, high in fiber, and can do the similar things like all these isolates and whatnot are doing, but in a whole food form. And then you can make things out of it like crackers, or you can make things out of like even hamburger buns. So like, let's take the hot dog bun, for example. The hot dog bun is a good example of why, America is diabetic. Why there's this epidemic. It's because it's basically just refined white flour, so refined wheat flour with all the fiber taken out of it. It's not much protein in it. There's not much nutrients. It's fortified with this and that, but it's not nutrient dense, and it's high glycemic. So it turns into fat very quickly in the body. So so, what do you tell Americans? Stop eating your hot dogs. And like, so I'm like, okay, it's not the right way to go. It's like, just make that hot dog bun healthier. So if you take that hot dog bun and it's a combination, say, oat and chickpea flour, you get something which is incredibly high in dietary protein and incredibly high in dietary fiber. And it tastes basically the same.
Nice.
So the, chickpea and oat are very neutral tastes. Like, and so, you go from eating something which is essentially toxic and no value to your body to something which is going to, nourish you, but you're still eating a hot dog.
Yeah.
And then we can get into the actual hot dog.
Yeah.
It's like, stop eating, meat, you got to go vegan, all this stuff. Well, looking at the marketplace, it's not really working. People aren't going to stop eating meat. Like there has been a movement to vegetarians. There is a vegan movement, but there is a kind of, what am I trying to say here? Perception that it's mainstream, but it's not.
Well, I think people are starting to adopt a little bit of plant-based diet here and there, right? But people aren't going wholly plant-based. So I think a more realistic goal for the food industry is to get people to be flexitarian and conscious consumers of like, you are going to eat some meat, but try to eat, grass-fed, meat from a good farm that does properly rotates crops and animals and so on and so forth, not just the highly processed garbage that's giving you all sorts of diseases.
Totally. Just change the hot dog.
Appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule and all that you do to kind of push the food industry forward and champion organic and family farms and traceability. All that I think is starting to pick up more and more and more in the industry. You've always been kind of ahead of the curve, 10, 20 years ahead. And I appreciate that because as the rest of the world catches up, we need someone to look forward to who's paved the way. So thank you for doing all that you do. And thanks for carving out some time to chat with us today.
Right on. Thanks, Gage. Love what you're doing with Evolve. And so me and Gage have known each other for over 12 years now, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
And Gage is one of the really important people in the good food movement who helps people like me and other brands, make their products look beautiful. And it really helps us to message our ethical attributes to the public. So design is super important. And maybe one day I'll interview you about design. So,
nice.
Anyways,
sounds good.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for the shout out. All right, cheers. Thanks. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Farmer Direct Organic, go to fdorganic.com. Business can be a powerful force for good. Is your brand living up to its full potential? Go to evolvecpg.com to learn about our new impact workshop, Exponential Good. Over 6 weeks, we'll be thinking bigger, getting relevant, spreading throughout, going exponential, working backwards, and making it real so you can walk away with a clear vision and a detailed action plan for scaling your brand's positive impact exponentially. Subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel for more innovator interviews, expert advice, and leadership discussions. If you like this episode, leave a heart, thumbs up, or review, and share it with your colleagues. As an ever-evolving show, we also love feedback, so send us your thoughts or ideas for who we should talk to next to evolve@modernspecies.com.